Raise your hand if you've ever watched a movie or a show and you've seen a character who's of the same nationality or race as you, and you've actually just been disappointed. If you've sighed and you've thought, man, that is not who we are, and that's not how we act, and that's not how we speak. If you relate to that feeling, raise your hand. That feeling, the disappointment, and being met with a barrage of stereotypes eventually leads to a chain of reactions, which in the end results in cultural erasure. It causes us to shrink parts of ourselves that we feel will stand in harsh contrast to others, parts too vibrant and too traditional. Let me explain this chain. In every piece of media we consume, be it movies, books, theater, anything, in every piece, we search for ourselves, people like us, to see where we fit into the story and what is our role. Being met with these versions on the screen makes us feel as though the whole world now sees us. Reducing this version to a one dimensional character whose only characteristics are stereotypical ones tells the world that the stereotype is all that we are. So we panic. We rush to put out the message, I'm not the stereotype. This is not me. And so I introduce to you the phenomenon of the stereotype threat. We as human beings tend to categorize ourselves and our world into different social groups based on our nationality, race, religion, gender, and so many other criteria. And then we try to understand how our personal identity fits in accordance with these groups that we associate ourselves with. When we are met with inaccurate representations or portrayals of our social groups, it triggers the stereotype threat. It's the fear of conforming to and confirming negative stereotypes about the groups we associate ourselves with, or the groups that we think we belong to. This invokes a type of pressure in us, which is responsible for the second part of the chain, rejection. Some of us are so deeply affected by the misrepresentation of our people that we spend our entire youth trying to erase any trace of our cultural upbringing, which is what happened to me. In my case, growing up, watching movies, reading books, I always noticed this. The relevant characters, the ones who actually mattered, the ones who were likable, were never from any ethnic backgrounds. The ones who were merely existed as a punchline or ornaments. It was a case of representation for the sake of representation. So I lived with this belief that I had to sacrifice my culture and try to erase it from who I was to be truly accepted and perceived as a multifaceted person with ideas and opinions and not just a stereotype. To me, my traditional South Asian side and my personal identity, which is the identity that people knew and formed opinions of me from, could not coexist. They were mutually exclusive. One always canceled out the other. So I'm Indian, right? And I hope that's pretty evident when people look at me, which is a big thing for me to say right now, at this point in life. Because there used to be a time when I was younger where I felt and I didn't want to be perceived as or seen as too ethnic. In fact, I want to show you an embarrassing picture. What's embarrassing about this picture? I look so cute. So, see? Nothing embarrassing. Nothing embarrassing today. 11 years ago, however, was a different story. It's the fact that my cultural side is on full display. I so desperately wanted to look normal. The word that was in my head was normal. The suggestion that anything or anyone, including me, who was too vibrantly cultural or ethnic, was a deviation from the idea of normal. The reason I was of this opinion was that every single character in media, all my favorite characters, were never from ethnic backgrounds until it needed to be a plot device. The fear of not being normal led me to reject everything that was representative of my culture. I'm Saanvi, and my goal today is to help you eliminate these two steps. Why is that picture no longer embarrassing for me? You see, we finally start to feel the loss of everything we rejected in ourselves. We feel this need to reclaim what is so precious to us, the culture and traditions of our ancestors, the history and the stories of our home. After years of erasing ourselves, trying to build this identity, we grow tired. We grow so tired of letting other people determine what parts of ourselves form our personal mosaic. We begin to understand that our cultural identity affords us different and unique perspectives of our world. It is ingrained in every single part of ourselves. Rejection of our culture takes everything along with it, our very essence as human beings. Our cultural identity affects our opinions, our reasoning, because it affects how we look at things. It affects our social standing on issues and our interactions with people. Also, how we relate to situations. Because history is always being made, and we are the writers. There's not one narrative, but in fact, thousands, millions, and even billions of different narratives and stories of the same exact events. Which is why the knowledge of what has come before, our languages, our tradition, and our history is so important. Because culture affects our perception of history and what side of history we are on. So, who are we? And who determines that? We need to find a way to raise a generation of leaders who will never, at any point, feel the need to sandpaper themselves, rub off edges that are too prominent, soften accents, forget where we come from, shrink down our traditions, our histories, and that side of us down to the little parts that we think will be accepted. Because at the end of the day, do we decide who we are, or do we let other people or stereotypes decide that for us? It is time for all of us to realize that we do not need to let go of who we are, and we do not need to dishonor our ancestors by doing that just to be accepted in society. What we do need to do is dismantle systems in society that make us feel as though we have to. Because at the end of the day, our culture is the very essence of humanity. We need to go back and relearn the stories of our past to keep them alive, practice traditions, celebrate festivals, pass down customs, speak our languages. It is our responsibility to push back and advocate for better, good, and accurate representation because no one else, nobody else is obliged to do that for us. It is also our duty to get on the journey of fully understanding that cultural side of ourselves. So, what do? We learn about our past. We push for representation, all of that, but most importantly, we tell our story. That is what you have at the end of the day, your story, where you come from, and where you are. You've heard about mine. You see where I'm from. You've seen my past. You've seen where I am today. And now you've heard about the journey. So let me hear yours. Let the world hear yours, because that is what the world needs at this point. It's who you are. Thank you.